The train whistle. The whistle of the evening train echoed across the dry plains, a lonely cry carried by the wind. The small station in Dry Creek wasn't used to much excitement. Most days, the only sounds were the restless shuffle of cattle hooves or the creak of wagon wheels heading west. But tonight, half the town had gathered near the depot, curious eyes fixed on the train that came puffing in, black smoke trailing like a dark omen. Among those watching was Caleb Hart, a tall, broad-shouldered rancher whose silence was as heavy as the mountains he worked beneath. Folks called him the Silent Rancher, not because he couldn't speak, but because he rarely wasted words. He was a man of action, a man who carried the burden of years and loss, and a man who had long ago decided he didn't need anyone until he received the letter. The letter had been short and plain. A woman from back east had agreed to come west as a mail-order bride. He hadn't written much himself, just enough to say he needed someone to keep his home and maybe, in time, share his lonely life. He didn't know what to expect. But what stepped off that train stole his breath and stirred a fire he hadn't felt in years. She was small, delicate, her hands trembling as she clutched a battered carpetbag. Her dress was plain, wrinkled from travel, but the fabric wasn't what caught Caleb's attention. It was the bruises. Fading yellow and deep purple marks along her cheekbone. A cut near her lip. Shadows of pain hidden beneath her eyes. The crowd whispered, "Lord have mercy, look at her face. Who'd do such a thing? A bride, all the way out here. Poor thing looks like she's been to hell and back." The woman faltered under their stares, looking around with desperate eyes. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She hugged her bag closer, as though it could shield her from the judgment of strangers. Caleb stepped forward. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world seemed to still. She looked frightened, but also searching, like she was waiting for someone, hoping for a savior who might not exist. Caleb felt a tug deep in his chest. "You're coming with me," he said, his voice low but steady. A murmur ran through the crowd at his blunt words, but she blinked, her breath catching, and then slowly nodded. Relief washed over her face. He reached for her bag. She flinched. His jaw tightened at the sight of her fear. Gently, slower this time, he lifted the carpetbag from her trembling hand. His touch was careful, as though he knew she'd break if handled too roughly. Without another word, he led her through the crowd, ignoring the gossiping whispers behind them. The walk to the ranch. The road stretched dusty and long, lined with mesquite and tumbleweed. Caleb kept his stride steady, his silence heavy, but his presence solid as stone. The woman, his bride now, whether she liked it or not, walked a step behind him. Finally, he broke the silence. "What's your name?" She hesitated, her voice soft and unsure. "Eleanor. But folks call me Nora." Caleb gave a small nod. "Nora, then. And you must be Mr. Hart." "Caleb," he corrected simply. She glanced at him, surprised. Most men demanded titles, respect, distance. But he offered his name like it was a hand outstretched. Something inside her eased, if only a little. Still, her heart pounded. She wasn't sure what kind of man he was. She had escaped cruelty, but what if she had walked straight into another prison? When they reached the ranch, dusk was spreading across the sky, painting it in streaks of gold and rose. The Hart Ranch stretched wide and lonely, a big house standing firm against the endless land. Caleb pushed open the door and stepped aside. "Go on." Inside, the house was tidy but bare, smelling faintly of wood smoke and leather. There were no frills, no warmth, just a place kept alive by habit. Nora stood in the entry, clutching herself. Caleb set down her bag. "This is home now." Something broke in her then. A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. She quickly turned her face away, ashamed. Caleb's brow furrowed. He wasn't good with words, but he couldn't just stand there while she cried. Slowly, awkwardly, he reached out and brushed his thumb across her cheek, wiping the tear away. His touch was warm, careful. "You don't have to be afraid here," he said, his deep voice steady. "No one'll hurt you again." Her chest ached at the promise. She wanted to believe him. God, she needed to. Supper and silence. That night, Caleb fixed beans and cornbread. He wasn't much of a cook, but it was food. They sat across from each other at the wooden table, the lamplight soft between them. Nora ate slowly, her hands delicate on the spoon. Caleb noticed she winced each time she lifted her arm, another hidden bruise, another hurt. His stomach tightened with anger, not at her, but at whoever had dared to lay hands on her. Finally, he spoke. "Who did that to you?" Nora froze. Her spoon clattered against the bowl. She lowered her gaze. "It doesn't matter. I left it behind." His eyes hardened. "A man." She swallowed. "Yes." Caleb's hands clenched into fists. The silence stretched heavy. He wanted to ask more, wanted to hunt the bastard down, but he saw the way her shoulders shook, the way her breath came quick. She didn't need questions. She needed safety. So he forced himself to lean back, his voice steady. "Then it ends here. With me." Her eyes lifted, wide, shimmering in the lamplight. There was something in his tone, not just protection, but certainty. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope. A silent comfort. Later, when she lay in the small guest room he'd prepared, Nora couldn't sleep. The shadows of old fears clawed at her. She heard footsteps outside and stiffened. But then there was a soft knock. "Nora," Caleb's voice rumbled low. "You all right?" Her lips trembled. I don't know." The door creaked open. Caleb stood there, hat in hand, looking uncertain. He wasn't a man who entered a lady's room, not without cause. But he saw her curled on the bed, small and frightened, and something inside him cracked. He didn't move closer, just leaned against the doorframe. "You're safe here. No one touches you without your say. Not even me." Her throat tightened. No man had ever spoken to her like that. "Thank you," she whispered. Caleb nodded once, then turned to leave. But her voice stopped him. "Could you stay? Just until I fall asleep?" His chest tightened. He stepped inside, pulled the chair near her bed, and sat. The silence between them wasn't cold. It was steady, like a blanket. His presence filled the room with something stronger than words. Nora's eyes fluttered closed. For the first time in what felt like forever, she slept without fear. Caleb sat watching her, the rise and fall of her breath, the delicate curve of her face. Something fierce burned in his chest, a promise he didn't yet know how to speak. But he knew this much. She was his now, not in chains, not in fear, but in protection, in care, maybe even in love. And he would never let her be hurt again. A new beginning. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the plains, warm and golden, chasing away the chill of night. Nora woke to the sound of roosters crowing and the steady thud of boots outside. For a moment, she lay still, wrapped in the quilt Caleb had left at the foot of her bed. She traced the stitches with her fingers, each thread a small reminder that she was far from the place that had broken her. When she stepped outside, she found Caleb already working. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his broad shoulders glistening with sweat as he hauled hay bales into the barn. He moved with strength and silence, his focus steady, as though nothing could shake him. Nora lingered on the porch, uncertain. She had never known a man who worked without complaint, who carried power without cruelty. He glanced up, saw her watching, and simply gave a short nod. Somehow, that single gesture made her feel welcome. Small steps. Over the days that followed, Nora learned the rhythm of ranch life. She cooked simple meals, mended shirts, and tended to the chickens. Caleb rarely spoke more than a few words at a time, but his presence filled every space. When she stumbled carrying a bucket, his hands were there, steadying her. When she pricked her finger sewing, he silently set a clean rag beside her. When nightmares woke her in the middle of the night, she found the lamp still burning in the hallway, as if he had been keeping watch. One evening, as they ate together at the wooden table, Nora dared to ask, "Do you always live so quiet?" Caleb chewed his food, then looked at her with those steady blue eyes. "Words don't fix much. Work does." She smiled faintly. "Maybe. But sometimes words help." His gaze lingered on her, thoughtful, before he said softly, "Then tell me what helps you." The simplicity of his question undid her. No man had ever cared what she needed. Her throat tightened, and she whispered, "Patience, time, and kindness." Caleb nodded once, as though sealing a vow. "Then that's what you'll have." The past revealed. As the weeks stretched into months, trust grew between them. Nora's bruises faded, though the scars on her heart remained. One night, while the wind howled outside, she finally spoke of the man who had hurt her. "He was supposed to marry me," she said, her voice trembling. "But when I told him no, he said I was worthless. He beat me until I believed it. That's why I left. That's why I came here." Caleb's jaw hardened, his fists clenching at his sides. Rage burned in his chest, but he forced his voice to stay gentle. "He was wrong. You're worth more than he could ever understand." Her eyes filled with tears. "Do you really believe that?" Caleb leaned closer, his rough hand cupping her cheek with the gentleness of a prayer. "I know it." The words wrapped around her like a blanket. For the first time, she let herself believe them. A silent courtship. Life on the ranch became less lonely. Caleb found himself listening for the sound of Nora's laughter as she worked in the garden. She stitched curtains for the windows, softening the sharp edges of his home. At night, they sat on the porch, the sky stretched wide with stars. He didn't speak much, but Nora began to understand the language of his silence. The way he set her chair close to the fire so she'd stay warm. The way he walked beside her, his arm always brushing close, as if ready to catch her. The way his eyes softened when they rested on her. One night, she placed her hand over his on the railing, testing the waters. He didn't pull away. His fingers curled around hers, rough and strong, holding as though he'd never let go. Her heart beat wildly, but she whispered, I think I'm not afraid anymore." Caleb's thumb brushed over her knuckles, his voice low and steady. "That's all I wanted." Love in bloom. The turning point came one spring morning. Nora was hanging laundry on the line when a sudden gust of wind caught the sheet and tangled her in it. She laughed, a sound so pure Caleb stopped in his tracks just to hear it. He crossed the yard, gently pulling the fabric free. Their eyes met, sunlight dancing between them. Something shifted. Something long held back finally broke free. Caleb lifted his hand, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Nora!" His voice was low, almost reverent. She swallowed, her cheeks warm. "Yes." His eyes searched hers, as if asking permission without words. She gave the faintest nod, and then his lips were on hers. The kiss was slow, tender, carrying the weight of every unspoken promise. His hand rested against her back, steady and sure, while her fingers curled into his shirt, holding on as though she had finally found solid ground. When they pulled apart, breathless, Nora whispered, "I never thought love could feel like this." Caleb pressed his forehead against hers. "It's the only kind of love you'll ever know here. Safe. True. Yours." A home together. Summer came, and with it, new beginnings. The ranch was no longer a place of silence, but of laughter, warmth, and quiet joy. Nora's scars faded, replaced by strength. Caleb, once a man of few words, found himself speaking more when she was near, his heart unburdened for the first time in years. One evening, As the sun dipped low and painted the horizon in fire and gold, Caleb took her hand. "You came here broken," he said softly. "But you've healed me too. I don't want you just as my bride, Nora. I want you as my wife, in truth, in love, in every way that matters." Tears glistened in her eyes. "Yes, Caleb. Yes." They sealed their vow with another kiss, gentle and fierce, a promise of forever. And so, the silent rancher who once lived alone found his heart in the woman who arrived beaten and afraid. Together, they built something stronger than the past, stronger than pain. They built a home. They built love. And neither would ever be lonely again.